Hello, children. Welcome to the next class of biology. Today, we are going to start a new chapter in biology, and that is reproduction. Reproduction in animals. What is meant by reproduction? It's a biological process in which new individuals, we call them as offsprings, are produced from their parents. So you should know that reproduction is a biological process in which new individual organisms called offsprings are produced from their parents. And it's required for the continuity of species and which continues generation after generation. There are two main types of reproduction, and they are asexual reproduction and sexual reproduction. Let's see about sexual and asexual reproduction. In case of sexual reproduction, two individuals are involved. One is male, another one is female, and they form gametes, or we can call it as sex cell. And when these gametes fuse together, it results in the formation of next generation. So if two parents are involved, for the production of gametes, and which in turn results in the fusion of gametes, we call such kind of reproduction as sexual reproduction. And all higher plants and animals, they can do, sexual reproduction. And example in human beings, fishes, frogs, cow, etc. Whereas in a sexual reproduction, only one parent is involved. The next generation or offsprings are produced from single organisms, and there is no gamete formation. There is no sex cell formation in case of asexual reproduction. And you can see in case of amoeba, yeast, hydra, etc. Or in most of the lower organism, you could see various types of asexual reproduction. Is it clear? Now let's see the differences between unisexual and bisexual organisms. And in most of the higher organisms, you could see the presence of male and the female organisms, where you can see that the sexes are separate. Such kind of organisms where the reproductive system, the male and the female reproductive systems are present in different individuals, and we call them as unisexual organisms. For example, human beings, birds, fishes, reptiles, amphibians, mammals, etc. In most of the higher organisms, you could see, them as male and female separately. Whereas, in case of bisexual organisms, both the sex organs, that means the male and the female reproductive systems are present in the same individuals. So you should know that, unisexual organisms are the organism where you could see the sexes are separated, whereas in bisexual organism, in one individual itself, you could see the presence of, the male reproductive system and the female reproductive system. Examples for bisexual organisms, they are, some lower ones like, earthworms, leeches, starfish, tapeworm, etc. So is it clear for you? Unisexual and bisexual organisms? Yes. Now, I told you in case of sexual reproduction, the gametes are produced. The male organism produce male, the gamete. The female organism produce female gamete. The male gamete, it's called sperm. The female gamete is called, ovum. And during the time of, sexual reproduction, they fuse together. The male and the female gametes fuse together. And that process, we call it as fertilization. So it's a process of combining the male and the female gamete. So don't forget, male gamete is called sperm and the female gamete is called ovum. And after the process of fertilization, a fusion product is formed, and that's called zygote. See, this is a representation of the egg, the female gamete, and this is a representation of the male gamete, and that is, the sperm. And, fertilization can happen either inside the body of the organism or outside. And based on that, we can divide fertilization into two types: external fertilization and internal fertilization. In case of, frogs and fishes, you could see that, they lay egg outside. And even sperms also produce into the water bodies. And the process of, the fertilization, the process of combining of the male and the female gamete, it takes place in water. And that process of fertilization, if it is happening outside the body of an organism, we call it as external fertilization. Examples in case of frogs, fishes, etc. Whereas in higher organisms like us and in most of the animals, you could see that, the process of fertilization, the fusion of the male and the female gamete, it takes place inside the body of the female parent. And that's called, internal fertilization. So there are two types of fertilization. It's based on where the process it occurs. And if it is happening outside the body of the organism, it's called external fertilization. And if the process of fusion takes place inside the body, and especially inside the body of the female parent, and we call it as, internal fertilization. Is it clear for you? Now let's see what is meant by viviparous and oviparous. And you could see that there are some animals which give birth to young ones. Am I right? Whereas in case of some other animals, they lay egg. The animals which give birth to young ones, and we call them as viviparous animals. Examples in case of, humans, mammals, like, cows, monkeys, chimpanzees, etc. And, we all are viviparous. That means which give birth to young ones. And whereas some lower organisms, like, in case of birds and reptiles, you could see that they lay eggs, and which later develop into young ones. Such organism, if they lay egg, we call them as, oviparous. Examples, birds and reptiles. Hope it is clear for you. Thank you.